Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us at Japan House London for tonight's special event exploring Japanese museum collections across the UK with Professor Yoshi Miki. Today, in addition to our in-person audience here at Japan House, we are also broadcasting to a virtual audience on Zoom, YouTube, Facebook, X, and LinkedIn. So a warm welcome also to our online viewers. The event is being recorded and a recording will be archived on YouTube. For the last 10 years, tonight's guest has been undertaking a special international project funded by the National Museum of Japanese History. He has travelled in Wales, Scotland, and throughout England, visiting castles, historical houses, and museums to investigate Japanese collections that have been preserved there by local residents for centuries. Studying the objects in these collections and discovering their local significance, he has worked to raise their profile of these collections, and his UK-based research has resulted in a series of exhibitions, including Kizuna, Japan-Wales Design, shown at the National Museum Cardiff in 2018. Today, we are delighted to welcome Professor Yoshi Miki for a special talk in which he will share stories from this decade-long project and will tell us what he has learned. Following his presentation, Professor Miki will be joined in conversation with Karen George. Karen is a National Trust property curator at Chirk Castle and Gardens in Wales, and she has previously worked with Professor Miki on the Japanese collections at Chirk Castle. After the presentations, there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions. Questions are also welcomed from guests watching online on Zoom, who can submit questions using the Zoom Q&A function. Now, before I hand over to Professor Miki, to begin his talk, I would first like to welcome Minister Okazaki Yasuyuki, Minister of Public Diplomacy and Media at the Embassy of Japan in the UK, who will say a few words. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody here and in online lives. Welcome to Japan House London. And I would like to express my heartfelt welcome to all my dear lucky audience. Today's lecture is one I have been long waiting, and I would say you are doubly fortunate because first, you will be surprised to learn how far and widely Japanese cultural treasures have been spread to every corner of the United Kingdom since all times. And second, because you will also be guided to overlooked or hidden stories, such individual Japanese artifacts have been only quietly and covertly telling, which I hope surprise you even more. In London, there are some museums with large Japanese collections, such as the British Museum or V&A Museum, which attract a lot of sightseers. However, not many people are fully aware of hidden Japanese collections in countryside, in private manor houses and castles. Since 2011, Professor Yoshi Miki has been making a treasure hunting throughout the United Kingdom, especially in Scotland and Wales, and sharing the story behind them with their owners and local people. Since Anglo-Japanese exchange began 400 years ago, various Japanese artifacts have come to England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland for various reasons and various means. They have been carefully used, profoundly cherished, and well maintained by owners to be passed down for hundreds of years to now. Today's lecturer is a pioneer who had devoted himself for rediscovering such Japanese treasures scattered across the United Kingdom. However, his endeavor did not stop there. Antiques are witnesses to history. He proved it through his research. Each Japanese artworks in private residence in the countryside can reveal the hidden historical ties between Japan and such local places that can go back much longer periods than we imagine. I hope that today's lecture will offer all audiences from various towns and villages in the United Kingdom, including those where there may be, unfortunately, no Japanese restaurants or other tangible elements of Japanese culture, a sense of depth and width of the relationship between two countries and will inspire in them a further interest in Japan. Now I feel very honored to invite Professor Yoshi Miki, today's navigator. Thank you.
That was quite a lecture, Minister Okazaki. That raised the bar very high. Well, thank you, Minister Okazaki, for your kind words. I'm grateful for the support the embassy have given to our project over years. I also thank Ms. Shimokawa at the embassy, and then Simon Wright and Julian Rao of the Japan House, who helped me to get me here to stand in front of you tonight. It was 13 years ago when I started the project. Up to now, it is a long journey with full of surprises. I'm going to talk all about it in 30 minutes. So I should focus and not to talk about my private life. Although there is something I'd like to share, tonight's theme is a sharing. I was born and raised in Japan. I moved to America after I graduated to be trained at the museums in Boston, and then I stayed. I spent most of my career in abroad. I live in a suburb in San Francisco. I have a long commute to London or Tokyo. The airline company recently gave me a certificate that I flew over 2 million miles. No wonder I'm tired. So, well, I was a strange teenager when I was growing up. I often spent time in museum gallery after school. I always went alone. Isn't that weird? I spend time looking at art. I talk to object. Sometimes object talk to me back. So I come back, continue the conversation. Some adult visitors talk to me too. We had a chat in front of the object. It cleared my mind what I seen or was thinking. I've spent most of my career working in the museum gallery. The gallery is where visitors meet objects. To research objects and get to know your audience are equally important to me. That hasn't changed since I started my career. I love talking to visitors in the gallery. Sometimes I stand in a corner of the gallery to watch family or friends talk about objects. Oh, there's another spot I like to be in. I love standing in the entrance hall of the museum, watching visitors coming in and out. I see visitors pumped up heading to gallery. I see visitors leaving with satisfaction on their eyes. I love to share what I learned through the exhibit. And visitors can share each other too. We, the National Museum, named this project Research and Use of Overseas Japanese Artifacts and Documents. Use of artifacts means we share what we researched with you. It helps to raise the profile of Japanese collection locally. I wanted to work with people who care about collection. After 13 years and more than 40 visits to the UK, I now have friends everywhere: Cardiff, Wrexham, Manchester, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Aberdeen, Durham, all around the country. This is my handmade map. Red dots shows the places where I repeatedly visited. The average would be 3 times on each site. First visit, I meet staff and visitors, learn about the place, to study collections. Second and third visit, I talk to staff about the object I studied. There are 2 types of staff: curatorial and visitor services. mainly floor staff. The floor staff greets visitors. Many castles and historical houses have over 100 docents. They are local volunteers. I repeat group discussion with them to talk about the artifacts displayed, Japanese art, culture exchange, and others. A small group discussion is more effective. The National Trust and the National Trust for Scotland are our partners. I met wonderful people around the country. That kept me going. In a castle and a historical house, my approach to the object is simple. I go to the room, stand in front of the object, study it, take a notes, and picture. I sometimes cross the rope and step inside to take a closer look right in front of visitors. If necessary, I pick up and measure it. People around me are curious but polite. I think they enjoy watching my performance. Visitors start asking me questions. Well, gallery talk is my specialty. I won't hesitate. After I answered their questions, it's my turn. I ask them what they know about the object, the castle, history of town. Our conversation ended up talking about UK-Japan relationship. It happens. The floor staff, volunteer guys stop by. They start asking me questions. This is a good way to learn how much they know about Japanese objects and Japan. In return, they tell me the history of the town, castle. I learned that the locals frequently visit the building and garden. They are locals. So when I return for the second visit, they like to continue the conversation. They are getting comfortable talking about object and Japanese art with visitors. You might be surprised that there are over 150 places which preserve and display Japanese art collections in the UK. There are museums, castles, and historical houses. They all are open to public. I've been about 40, maybe. This project will never end. I hope someone will continue. Here are some artifacts I like to share. I took the most of pictures by myself while I was studying, so they are not pretty, but practical. The first group is called the exported pieces from 18th, 19th century. They are mainly made to order. Some were sold at the World Exposition, which were held in major cities in Europe. They were exclusively made for European market, not for Japanese domestic market. A lacquer bureau or secretary desk at the Durham Castle, 10 miles from center of Aberdeen. It sits in a cozy bedroom. The front is covered with wisteria and its flower. Above, the birds fly elegantly. It's inlaid mother of pearl. The significance is the roller cover. You roll it up and pull out the board. It's a desk. It's beautiful and practical. The scars and damage on the board shows it was used every day to read, write a letter, or check count book, maybe. The mother of pearl may have reflected the moonlight or light from lamp and shone beautifully. It is easier to picture it. The desk is in the actual room where it belongs, and you see the window right there. The stand was made after it arrived in Europe. It looks natural, and the color matched perfectly. I can see it was loved by owner family. It had been a part of family for a long time. It happened to be made in Japan. More importantly, It was used by family for centuries. It is nice to know it stays with the family. The dressing and writing box on the bottom on the picture. Do you know? I'm sorry. The dressing and writing box on the at the Chirk Castle. That's right. In a blue drawing room at the Chirk Castle, 16th century building with beautiful garden in mid Wales. It is another made to order from Europe. Early in 18th century, Japanese craftsmen made as shown in sample drawing from Europe. I don't think the craftsmen knew what they were making. Do you know why? A mirror was supposed to fit into the recess on the top board after it was brought into Europe. Instead, the craftsmen decorated the inside of the board beautifully. There was no need to decorate the space. It was in 18th century. They couldn't email each other. It took more than 3 years to receive the order, only if the ship was lucky enough to make the voyage. The craftsman couldn't bear to leave it blank. It's a craftsmanship anyway. But to me, the best part is the family didn't cover it with mirror. Well, it was so beautiful. I would do the same. There's more. Please look at the leg on the left side. All the legs are decorated. The owner was overwhelmed by the beauty of the box, so he or she went out of his way to decorate it with gold. Isn't it just fun? Imagine that. It is a part of family history, and it was happened to be Japanese made. This is how I write the label if I was asked. The cabinet on your right is another lacquer furniture with English leg stand in the salon at the same Chirk Castle. Together, we exhibited at the special exhibition Kizuna Japan Wales Design at the National Museum of Wales in 2018, which I will talk later. And Satsuma Lamp, Penryn Castle, Northern Wales. Did Japanese craftsmen make a lamp? No. They had no idea the base they made became a lamp with umbrella. He's probably going back down. He made a perfect base decorated with Satsuma design. He didn't know someone make a hole on the bottom, converted electricity for use as a table lamp. The wooden stand was added, which supports the wire. Another surprise for the craftsman. The bright side is it seems to blend seamlessly into the room. It survived because it has good design. More importantly, family made necessary adjustment so that it stayed close to their living. Turn it on and off, the light before they go to bed every night. It became a part of their family life. A similar lamp sits in a music room at Phoebe Castle near Aberdeen. The original base was made in Kyoto in 19th century. Then it was turned into lamp. Can you see the cracks running on the top? It reinforced with what looks like a staple. It was overcoated to match the color, a nice touch. I've seen many of these. This is very common. Even if there are cracks, the family took a good care. They wanted to have it around. When you turn it on, the light is on the crane. They start flying over your bed, you will have a good night's sleep. You will see a very similar lacquer furniture or ceramics in museum gallery. They are introduced as a Japanese and sit comfortably in a nice display case. At the castle or historical house, they may not be well protected, but they survive because the family took a good care. The relationship between the object and family are special. Again, these are exclusively made for European market, not for Japanese domestic market. They were all shipped out right after they were made. It is very rare to find it in Japan. So Japanese tourists who come to the castle are surprised to know they were made in Japan, because we haven't seen that before. Well, I'd like to share humor. Urushibara Yoshijiro, he is a woodblock printmaker. He was born and trained before he comes to the UK. He lived here for 30 years, from 1910 to 1940. His work is popular among Europe and America. I didn't expect to see his work when I visited a British University art department. A curator I met pulled them out from the pile of papers. It wasn't even framed. It was precious to be able to hold his work on my hand. Seeing his work in the middle of Wales unexpectedly make me wonder how he actively worked in the country. He was reachable to locals. No wonder he was very influential in the English color woodblock printing. Next two slides are a large group of art. In 1878, over 1,000 Japanese art objects arrived in Glasgow. They were most recent ceramics and lacquerware of the time. The Japanese government's office collected throughout Japan. 2 years earlier, 1876, a newly appointed museum manager, Mr. James Peyton, arrived in Glasgow. He had one assistant, that was it. A few months later, he wrote to his friend who was teaching at the University of Tokyo. He asked him to contact the Japanese government's office if they can help him to expand the museum collection with Japanese applied arts. To make a story short, because I talked about it for 5 minutes at the conference of Scottish Society Art History. So within 2 years, over 1,000 objects arrived. It was the biggest gift from Japanese government. My colleagues at the Glasgow Museums call it 1878 Exchange Collection. Mr. Peyton stayed on the job for the next 30 years to build the great Glasgow museums. But one of his first jobs as a museum director was build Japanese art collection. I visited Glasgow Museum's Resource Center, the collection store, more than 7 times to go through the collection. It is a time capsule. I'm hoping to develop an exhibition to have a chance to share what I learned with people in Glasgow someday. So this 1878 exchange collection was one of the largest Japanese collections collected over the 19th century. King Hyatt collection, Islamic collection, is one of the largest collections of the 20th century. David Hyatt King spent his entire life to collect Japanese ceramics. There are more than 1,500 objects. He passed away a few years ago. He was bidding the object online right before he passed away. his passion made the collection very special. His collection was divided and donated to several institutions: Durham University, British Museum, V&A, National Museum Scotland, Oxford, Cambridge University, and Bristol Museum and Art Gallery. Last month, I was able to study 400 ceramics at the Durham University Oriental Museum. I'm going to Scotland National Museum to learn their king collection later this week, and then go to Bristol next. It is exciting to explore a new collection. It's a kind of once of a century opportunity. National Museum Scotland and Oriental Museum have already displayed some of the collection to the public. It is nice to see newly acquired collection in the gallery. This country has a large collection of Japanese art. Now, I'd like to take this opportunity to tell you about the project. Back in 2011, when the project was granted by the National Museum, I didn't have a plan how to proceed. No one knew why I was here, even when I first landed at Heathrow Airport for this project. It would take me back another 10 years. Around 2000, Gregory Irvine, curator of Japanese art V&A, handed me his book, Japanese Art Collection in the UK, published by the Japan Society of the UK. In his book, I learned there were over 150 Japanese collections around the country. He listed museums, castles, and houses which have Japanese collection. Most importantly, he only introduced the places where we can visit to see Japanese objects. They all are open to the public. I only knew the collection in the greater London area. I used to come to London from America, where I live. These museums in London taught me a lot of Japanese art and collection. I call them my graduate school. Even now, I secure one afternoon to spend time in the ceramic gallery at the V&A every time I stay in London. I've never thought of the place beyond London. As a curator myself, I wondered how they manage the collections locally. I told Junko Takekawa of the Japan Foundation London office. She handed me her report of the discussions she had with curators around the country. She and Greg met local curators, discussed the issues, what they are facing, lack of information on the object, short staffing because of the finance problem, and etc. So here are the voices from curators of local museum who take care of Japanese collection. It was published in 2006. Many curators take care of not only Japanese collection, but many other collections. I know major museums like British Museum, V&A, and National Museum Scotland assist local museums to display their Japanese collections. There are too many institutions with too small number of staff. I see the challenge. I read Greg's book and Junko's report over and over. In 2011, I started making connections. Simon, here on the Simon Wright, the programming director of programming with Japan House, was at the embassy then. He connected me to people at the foundations, Daiwa Anglo-Japanese Foundation, Japan Foundation, Great Britain Sasakawa Foundation, and others. I valued their advice. I'm grateful for the support they have given to us. Nicole Rumaniel of the Sainsbury Institute for the Study of Japanese Art and Culture introduced me staff of the embassy and museums. I went to Cardiff to see David Anderson, Director General of National Museum Wales. He was one of my mentors. I told him the plan. He told me to start project right here in Wales. That was the best advice I ever had. Staff at the National Museum was very supportive. I set up my project base in Cardiff, then started driving throughout Wales, visiting castles and houses and museums. As you know, the castles and historic houses are not in the heart of the city. They are surrounded by mountains and woods, sheep and cows. And I had to drive through hundreds of roundabouts. Chirk Castle sit in the mid-Wales. They have a beautiful Japanese lacquer cabinets and ceramics in the salon and drawing room. I repeatedly visited. I wanted to spend as much time with floor staff. There are many good examples of Japanese art. One day, I noticed there was a chest in the long gallery. I knew it was on the list, but I was busy working on the other things. I recognized the drawing on the sides. Some parts are damaged and peeled off. The lacquer surface was faded. It was unnoticeable among other beautiful furniture in the long gallery. Visitors passed by without noticing. This time I got curious. Karen and I checked the hinge. It looks sturdy. So she and her colleagues lifted up. We found a picture drawn on the back of the top cover. A stunning, beautiful drawing of tigers. Because it was inside, it was not exposed to light and was in excellent condition. Visitors started gathering around us. I can tell visitors is fascinated by its powerful depiction. Suddenly, it got my attention. I'm glad I didn't miss it. This struggling chest from around 1600. Again, the stand was made locally. The shape is European style. If you look at closely, the detail of decorative motif is very Japanese. The drawing in the boxes are from story Tale of Genji. There is a family crest on the side. It is a type of chest which was made for order from Portugal. My colleague of National Museum, Dr. Hidaka, pointed out the shark skin was used to cover the surface. The shark skin was brought in from Europe for a very short period. It was very early in 17th century. The period when this was made, exported, so the time period when it was made and exported can be determined. My colleagues of the National Museum are very supportive. I'm very thankful. A 400 years old chest sits quietly in Long Gallery. Sir Thomas Middleton I purchased the Chirk Castle in 1595, around the time the chest was made. He was one of the founders of the East India Company, later Mayor of London. He was in a thick of London's trading network, and thus it is assumed that it was he who acquired the chest. First, it was in his room in London. I don't think he went to the castle right away. In 17th century, it was a castle for war. The inventory records are at the National Library, Wales. I was thrilled to go through the handwritten records at the library. It shows that there were Asian furniture early in 18th century. I think of the time when it was brought into the castle. This luxurious object was a powerful status symbol for Middleton and his descendants. This could be as the first known object from Japan to come to Wales. I thought that this is a good story to share with visitors. We found more stories like this. I went back to David Anderson and told him that I want to share what I learned about Welsh Japanese collection with broad audience. I wanted the people of Wales to be proud of what they preserved for centuries. In 2018, the special exhibition Kizuna Japan Wales Design opened. We were fortunate to be able to bring some of national treasures from Japan to display alone. Welsh Japanese collection. The first thing visitors saw upon entering the exhibition was the Shaolin chest. It was the first time it had left the castle in hundreds of years, and the exhibition drew record number of visitors in summer, making the chest the most familiar Japanese object to the Welsh nation. Miss Beth Davis, a Welsh government official, told me that who would have thought that the Japanese art objects were preserved in the castle. She said she'd look forward to visiting the castle. We had the honor of welcoming Prince of Wales to the gallery. My colleague, co-curator of the exhibition and the keeper of arts of the National Museum of Wales, Andrew Renton, and I had the opportunity to show the King our exhibition for 35 minutes alone. Everyone else had to stay away at least 25 meters from us. But he stopped every single object and made comments or asked us questions. Some artifacts reminded him his trip to Japan. Apparently, he had stayed at the Chirk Castle for a while. She shared his memories with us. The object connects us. That is the power of objects. Please see this slide. So this is the Shaolin chest at the castle now. It got the podium and levels. We made it him star. Well, I'd like to ask Karen to come in. Karen, yeah, okay. So Karen was with Chirk Castle when I was working. She was one of the best collaborators. And then so we can have a chat and see, yeah. Hi, Karen. Well, you have to say something nice about me. That's why you're here. So, when I started the project, I was totally alone. I had no one, but the people helped me, embassy and Japan Foundation, everyone, and I'm very grateful. At the same time, on the project, she was the first collaborator, and then that set the tone of this project. I had only 30 minutes, so I wasn't sure I showed the artifacts enough because I had a pressure from Minister Okazaki. There's no hidden things. It's just there's a story with the object. That's what I like. I wanted to find out so that we can share, and then the local people pass on this story to the next generation so that the Japanese artifacts can stay there. Otherwise, it's gonna disappear. So that was my concern. But anyway, so well, thank you for coming.
For asking me, it's a great opportunity.
So remember the time how we worked on and at the time, and what was thinking? We was thinking when we started working.
Well, I remember when you first arrived, we hadn't met before. It's a complete surprise. I was fairly new in post, so I'd actually only been collections and house manager for about a year.
Oh, I didn't know.
So, yeah, so your approach was actually
Like
the
a
first
there
one that
forever.
I'd ever dealt with. So what a fantastic opportunity to start my career working with external curators and the museum community. So forever grateful. I think you were really quite surprised that I said, yeah, sure, help yourself. Just take your shoes off
Yeah,
as you go
yeah,
over the
she
carpet.
just let me go. And nobody with me, and
He gave
so-
me the impression he was going to be careful. And he was.
Yeah, but it was great because you kind of know what I wanted to. You set up all the meetings and then the group session with volunteers, so I can comfortably talking to people, and then a good discussion. And so, how was the after that? The-
Well, it was great. It was so positive. Obviously, I had an ulterior motive because I knew that Yoshi had information that I wanted and I needed. So, and I felt actually quite awkward to start with because what we knew about our Japanese collections was really quite limited, to be honest, on our inventories. And certainly with the lacquer chest, we had a circa 1600 and potentially owned by the first Sir Thomas Middleton that bought Chirk in 1595. So for us, the significance of that object in particular was the fact that it linked to the first Sir Thomas Middleton. It sort of brought Chirk Castle more into more British politics and social history and so on. But also that it told Chirk's story. What we found out through working with Yoshi and the other curators was actually the significance of that chest was much, much greater, global, international significance. And we are now able to share that with our volunteers who can now talk to visitors about it and yeah, celebrate that actually these really significant items help tie that global history together and that Wales-Japan relationship, that early trade. I don't think any of us really appreciated how significant that chest was at that time. And it gave us the opportunity to build that podium
Right.
and put the lights on. And the National Trust recognised it as one of its 125 treasures. So in 2020, the National Trust celebrated 125 years.
Big step.
Yeah, and the lacquer chest was one of those 125 items. So it really helped raise the profile not only
This is the one.
of the chest.
This is the first time I
That's
saw.
what it was displayed
corner.
before, so no ropes or anything like
Going
that.
that way.
People just walk past it.
Uh-huh.
We know that if you put ropes around an object and light it, it makes it special. So that's what we did. And the volunteers, as well as myself, were just so immensely proud to work at Chirk Castle and to be the custodians of this amazing object.
So the Japanese objects are or is like Minister Okazaki. They are there all the time and talk about Japan. So objects connect people. That's the power. And then I really believe that. And so so research is important. At the same time, I'd like to share that with local people so that that's the, I think, only way the object can survive. Because it's not the family belongs anymore. It's more like open to public. So the object need another way to survive in that local. So the talk about object or give the opportunity to talk about the object in Japan through the object is the good way. And so the Karen even created the tour of Japanese object in the castle. So these kind of connect to, and particularly when I talk to the volunteers, I want them to speak out their words to the visitors. I don't want to instruct them to have to explain the object. Otherwise, nobody listens. So yeah, so you created your way to move on. So that was wonderful. And so I kind of set the example, and then I was comfortable going to the next castle and other place, keep going on. So that kept me going for the 10 years. Thank you very much. Yeah. Oh, and yeah, thank you. So this is where you work now.
Yes, this is where I work.
You want to talk about it a little bit?
Well, I'm sure quite a few of you know quite a lot about Paris already. For those of you that watched Countryfile about 2 weeks ago, my colleagues there did an amazing job showcasing this property. So unlike Chirk, which was an English castle originally built on the English border, built by Edward I to subdue the Welsh, this is a proper Welsh medieval castle. So built in the 13th century, built for Welsh princes. It's seen battles and sieges, and then later on, it became a comfortable family home for the Herbert family and the Clive family. And now today it houses their collections that they amassed over the centuries. Two significant collections, really, the South Asian collection, which is for the majority displayed in a separate museum area, and then also more broad collections throughout the staterooms, pictures I think you saw. Oh yes, behind me. So that's the blue drawing room there.
Oh, right there in the middle. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one.
That's it. Yeah.
This castle does have a beautiful, stunning Japanese objects, quite many. So I just spent so much time. I wish you can visit.
What I would say though, is we're right in the middle of a rewiring project.
Ah.
So our staterooms, they are open. They're a little bit undone.
It was
so you have
dark,
to
wasn't
take
it?
us as you
Yeah, it
find
was
it.
hard to get in
Yeah.
detail.
But after
Yeah.
2025, we'll be looking at redisplaying those staterooms and really excitingly going through a lighting project to relight those collections inside. But otherwise, yeah, please come and see us, and Chirk too.
And the last thing, well, before I move to Q&A, speak out. That's the key. When even you go to the castle, stand in front of Japanese object, ask the volunteer the question. That help them to recognize the object. So just talk to, ask question, or yeah, in front of object. That help this object for the survival. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor Miki, for this wonderful presentation. And thank you very much to Karen George. It's been a pleasure to have you both here to hear about this very important and inspirational project. Now, I think we have some time to take some questions from the audience. We also have some questions coming in from our Zoom audience. So I think maybe while you're having a little think about what you would like to ask, we can take the first question from Zoom. So let's see what we have from Alexandra, who has said, "Thank you very much for a very interesting talk. During your travels, did you come across many early, that is pre-19th century inventories mentioning Japanese objects? And are they accessible to the public?"
Well, accessible. So most of castles inventory and all the record are preserved and kept the National Library. Castle don't keep it. And that makes sense to me too. So it's much better place to preserve. So library means it's accessible. Yeah, so particularly it's not easy to ask for the inventory or the list directly to the castle or house. Rather, check the national libraries first, Scotland or Wales, and even here. I think that's a better way. And I didn't expect I can get to see the original of 17th century, 18th century document, but they do. So I was it was on my hand. It was so hard to read because of all the decorative English. So it took, say, 5-10 minutes to recognize E. And then getting familiar with the old alphabet, and I can start reading it. But it was very exciting to see.
Thank you very much. So do we have, oh, there's many hands have gone up. So I think we do have limited time. So if we could just limit the questions to one per person, and who will go first to the question on the right over there. Yes. So we're just going to bring a microphone over to you so we can hear you through the live stream. There.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
Easy, please.
Thank you. It's amazing to see a lot of different collections, and could you please share with us how do you help creating those different objects? Because there are paintings, there are ceramics, there are furnitures, there are antique, etc. So how do you find, the best way to provide information on those objects that you find in different museums in around the UK? Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'm a specialist of applied arts, so ceramics and lacquers, and then so I'm not familiar with paintings or the prints. But luckily, I work for, or I belong to the National Museum of Japanese History. We have about 70 scholars and professors, so they help me to get me the information. So I deliver it. And so that's how, yes, I mean, that's a very good question. And I can't answer everything. So so that's a kind of teamwork. Yes.
Thank you. So yes, next on the front row. Yeah.
Thank you. I really like the aspect of the stories behind each of the objects. And I wanted to ask, what can you tell us about the types of resources that you have used to uncover these stories, and what was the most surprising story, the resource that you have discovered during your journey?
Well, they are not the discovery exact. There were the object and the people knew they were there, but just connecting the dots is the part I really enjoyed and also challenging. And so I need the skill to communicate and then pick up the keywords and then connect it and then share so that I get more information. So the face-to-face interview and also the group discussion was very helpful. I first did the group discussion to give the more information to the people, but they give me a lot of information. I know this, I know that, and then so that was the moment I can kind of get the idea. Oh, this can be a good story to tell or share. So I'm lucky. I like to talk to people. Well, I'm not good at listening, but somehow, somehow. But it was the people, the object connected us. So that was great, and I really enjoyed working this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so in the second row, the left.
Okay, so it's really, thank you very much for the fascinating presentation. So it's really interesting to learn that many of the private collections were produced for commercial transactions. So the craftsmen sort of tailored the design to order, right? So my question is, what do you think is the significance of having these collections exhibited as Japanese, although they really aren't sort of Japanese, they aren't representative of Japanese design as such.
That's a very specific question. The thing I talk about is we learned each other that not only Japan or other Asian, Chinese, Korean, because there was a market and they need to sell. So they kind of learn each other to make it better objects was the art. So it's not it was a competition, but at the same time, that's how this field was shaped up. And then, so there was a market that was very important. And then and particularly what I talked about the exported pieces at the beginning. And I also mentioned that Japanese didn't know they existed because they're all for the order, the market. And so they work so hard to learn each other to make these. So that there's nothing to be shamed or just they made it because there was a need. And then that's how the object then survived in this country. Otherwise, maybe it was just it stayed in the storage or something. But they always made for the market. So maybe that I'm sorry that maybe not the answer you were looking for, but it's just great to learn about how they learn each other to make the better artifacts or object. So that's all I can say. I'm sorry.
Thank you. And we'll come back to the room in a moment, but we just have a question from Rebecca Hill on Zoom, who says, again, thank you for a fascinating talk, Professor Miki. I'm wondering, is there one thing that you wish that British museums would do to raise the profile of Japanese collections here?
You mean the British Museum or museum in
Which
Britain?
British museums?
Museums.
Yes.
I think they're doing a great job. And I always learn something from their exhibition and their research. So make it better. I think to work with Japanese side, that's the big challenge. And I'm very lucky to be able to travel around, but most of my colleagues in Japan don't have much opportunity. So create a stage to work together, not only just a guest. And then the thing is, after the pandemic, the online meeting is getting much easier. And then I sometimes have the meeting. I live in San Francisco, and in Tokyo or Japan, and the UK curators, this triangle meetings. Some have to be middle to translate anyway. And so I'm the lucky one to wake up like at 2 a.m. And then they are like a early morning or late afternoon, but I'm in the middle of the night. But still, once face to face, that make a progress. And then after that, email or text or whatever is much easier. And I see the progress on this past couple of years. And so I hope, and particularly I'm kind of ending my career almost. So younger generation have more opportunity to communicate each other. And then traveling is not easy because of the economy in Japan is not so great. It's much harder now to travel to UK, but some way to find out, communicate online or whatever. So that might be the one that I showed. The people here like to communicate with Japanese specialists. So I agree. And then I just wanted to make more opportunity for both sides.
Thank you. So I think we have maybe time for two last questions from the room. So yes, on the second row here on the right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm curious, between your work in Japan, the US, and in the UK, have you found any key differences between what private collectors like to collect?
I can talk about Noah about that.
I have time.
I would say the private collector is much accessible. Well, I also work on, I do the project in Portugal too. And then without their association, I can't do my work. And then in the United States, the major collections, Japanese collections were both in Japan, the wealthy family went to Japan and then bought a lot and then brought back. But here in Europe has variety purchased in Japan maybe, but most of them are exported, like I said. So that's a little different. So that the connection with object is more personal, and so they're proud of it. And the American collection, well, I don't know if people agree, but it's the art collection. So that's the access is little tough. So I really enjoy working in Europe a lot about, yeah, much better, yeah.
Thank you. Oh, and yes, in the front row, please.
There's a new exhibition in William Morris Gallery, 24th March, Mingay. So people's art and craft. Are you involved with that?
No,
Yeah, but what do you think of the link between William Morris and Japanese craft, art and craft?
we Japanese love William Morris. I'm a big fan. So I think there's a lot of influence to Japanese audience too. So it's nice. And I've been that gallery too, and I did once exhibition long time ago. But it just amazing. It amazed me the William Morris in Japan, the collection is still going strong. And so there must be some secret. But I'm very happy to see that that's continued, and the effort they made to bring the object from Japan, which is not easy, particularly the crafts. So that's what I'd like to see more. We, the Japanese Museum, love to bring the exhibition from abroad a lot because they're the system. It's much easier to that. But how we can do that the opposite way is another our challenge, I think. So that kind of broke the barrier to exhibit it. So if you have a chance, that's a wonderful collection. So I encourage you to go to see that. Yeah.
Thank you. And maybe just one last question from Zoom to end on, but we have a message from Jenny who said, "This is so interesting. It makes me want to visit all these places. Will Professor Miki write a book on all the places to go to?"
I have small one, but yes, if I would, but I just love traveling. So, but yes, I tried. I will try.
Thank you very much. I think, yeah, we all have lots of different places that we'd like to visit after tonight's talk. So I think that's all we have time for, but for those in the hall, Professor Miki will be staying for a little bit longer. So if you didn't get the chance to ask your question, you might be able to come and ask it in person. But I hope you can join me in expressing your appreciation to the wonderful Professor Yoshi Miki. And thank you also, of course, to Karen George. And thank you, Minister Okazaki. And thank you all for joining us this evening, both here at Japan House London and online. Following today's event, we will send a short feedback form by email. I would be very grateful if you could fill this in with your comments so we can continue to hold these events in future and continue to improve them. Before you go, I would just like to introduce a few of Japan House London's current and upcoming programs. Thank you. If you haven't already, please do pay a visit to Japan House London's free gallery exhibition, Ainu Stories, which explores Ainu culture as it exists today in the community of Nibutani in Hokkaido. And a virtual version of this exhibition is also available on our website. On 12th March, please join us in person or online for an evening exploring the history and characteristics of the biwa with the talk and performance. And then on 18th March, we'll have another live streamed event, this time in partnership with Chatham House, inviting a panel of experts to discuss how Japan, the UK, and other partners can work together to improve relations with the Global South. That's all for tonight, but thank you once again to the wonderful Yoshi Miki, Karen George, and thank you all for joining.